Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you're well. Welcome back to Learn English with British Harry. My name is Harry. I'm a native British English speaker and an English teacher. One of my students the other day had a trip to the dentist and we spoke for some time about his experience, and that got me thinking that this is quite a common topic. And eventually, at some point in your life, you have to go to the dentist. And it's nice to start with some basic vocabulary and then work our way up to some interesting questions. So if we think about going to the dentist, there are some reasons why you would want to go to the dentist. Maybe you have tooth pain, maybe you have a cavity in your tooth, maybe it's just a normal checkup that you have to have. Maybe it's gum disease. Now, you could have something like gingivitis. So gingivitis is less severe than gum disease, and it's often accompanied by inflammation of the gums. So inflammation is when your gums would look red, they would feel sore, and at this point, it's a very good idea to go and see the dentist, because if it develops into full-blown gum disease, then you could have much more severe consequences. You may have to have teeth extracted, for example. So when you go to the dentist, you could also have a filling. And a filling is when the dentist uses some material, often looks silver, and they would fill in the cavity. And this is so that your food doesn't get stuck in your tooth. Secondly, it can stop decay. And decay is when the tooth starts to rot. When the tooth starts to rot, this isn't a good thing, because it's getting closer to the nerve, and it could leave the nerve exposed. And when this happens, it's very painful. It's very hard and very difficult to eat anything hot, anything cold, because your teeth and the nerves become very sensitive, and it can be extremely painful. If your tooth is very bad, if it's not repairable, then it may have to be extracted. So the whole tooth would have to be taken out. You could have a root canal. So this is where the dentist tries to save the existing tooth and treat the infection inside the tooth. So once you have a root canal, you usually have a crown placed on top, and a crown can be made of different material. It could be silver in appearance, or it could be white in appearance, depending on the material the dentist uses. You could have braces. When I was younger, I had braces to try and straighten my teeth, and it can be painful because you have to go back to the dentist to tighten the braces. And now the technology has advanced where you can have clear braces where it's not very visible to see, it's not really noticeable, but back in the day you had to have the metal wires. So let me know, did you ever have braces growing up? Did you ever have to go to the dentist for any kind of procedure? So a procedure is when they do something. So for example, a root canal, or extracting a tooth, or having a filling. So remember, a filling is when they fill in the cavity. They fill in the hole with the material. And this is quite common because in today's society, a lot of our diet is filled with sugar and unhealthy snacks. It's really difficult to avoid anything with sugar. Even things like bread that you buy from the supermarket can have sugar inside. With my tea and coffee, I've tried to make some adjustments. So I try to use honey instead of sugar, and I limit the amount of sweet things that I eat. But of course, it's unavoidable and they taste so good. For example, my favorite ice cream is a cornetto. I love cornettos, just a classic cornetto. I could eat 3 in a row. And one of the reasons is because they've become smaller over time. We have something called shrinkflation. And that's an interesting topic for another lesson. But basically, a lot of products over time have become smaller to cut costs. When you go to the dentist and you have a procedure, the dentist would use an anesthetic. And an anesthetic is an injection they put into the gums to numb the gums. And when they numb the gums, you don't feel the pain when they are using the drill. And I particularly don't like the sound of the drill, but because of the anesthetic, you don't feel the pain. And it's quite a strange experience. If you have a good dentist, he or she would be very comforting when they put the injection. I try not to look at the needle, and they would put the needle into your gum a few times, and then you would go back to the waiting room to then wait for the anesthetic to kick in. So when it kicks in, it's when your mouth starts to go numb, and it's quite a strange sensation. You have a tingling sensation which builds up, and it can go quite high, close to your eye. And then you are ready for the procedure, and then you go into the examination room, or another word could be the surgery. And this is where the dentist and the dentist's technicians are that help the dentist. Some nice phrasal verbs to also be aware of are things like take out. If I was speaking to a friend and I was telling him that I went to the dentist, I would say he took out, or the dentist took out, a tooth. So we have take out or took out. Build up. You can have a build up of plaque. And plaque is when you have things on your teeth that can build up, especially in between your teeth. And this is why it's a really good idea to floss. And floss is the thin piece of material. So you would use floss to stop the buildup of plaque. And over time, this can also damage your teeth. So it's a really good idea to stop that building up. We have come off. You could have a crown or a temporary crown while they are getting the solid material. They could put a temporary crown. And sometimes this can come off, especially if you're eating sticky food. This has happened to me before, and my crown has come off. And I've been searching for it in some bread to try and save so I can go back to the dentist so they can put it back on. We can have look at. So you could ask the dentist, can you look at my tooth at the back? So here you can be more specific and you can help the dentist to ascertain where the problem is. Carry out. So carry out is when the dentist performs something. So the dentist carried out the root canal successfully, which is always a good thing. Lie back. This means to recline in the chair. The dentist chairs are quite comfortable, I found, because they recline back and you have some armrests. Sometimes I find it a little bit awkward because if I have a scratch on my nose and the dentist is using the drill or examining my mouth, it's quite awkward because the more that you think about something, the more that it builds up. And I want to really scratch my nose, but I have to try and stop and distract my mind. Spit out. So this is when you spit out the liquid. So after the procedure, the dental technician will give you some liquid in a plastic cup to rinse around your mouth and then spit out. And this is to get rid of any pieces of filling that were left behind or any residue, so it can keep your mouth clean and it can start to heal faster. So when you go to the dentist, especially in the UK, you can go to an NHS dentist, and the NHS stands for the National Health Service. Depending on your circumstances, you may have to pay for the procedure, and they have different bands, so band 1, 2, and 3, and they would have different criteria within the bands. So they have different procedures they can carry out within the different categories. And normally they are covered by the previous category. So category 3 would cover 1 and 2. And the cost is cheaper than going to a private dentist. However, there could be a long waiting time. So if it's something very urgent, you have to express that to the dentist. When you are speaking to the receptionist, you have to explain that you are in a lot of pain. So I think the NHS dentists are really good. I've been to them in the past and they've been brilliant when I've had to see them. And talking about dental hygiene in general, I think it's really important to have a good dental routine, especially things like flossing, using mouthwash, because over time it can get very expensive, especially in the UK where there are lots of snacks and lots of sugary treats that you can have, especially during winter, where it's very cold and it's comforting to drink lots of tea and coffee and have little cakes and snacks and biscuits. But these things over time can add up. So that was some basic dentist vocabulary. Now it's nice to think about some interesting questions to take your English to the next level. If we think about what comes to mind when you hear the word dentist. And this is different for everyone. For me, it's a little bit of anxiety, a bit of fear, because it's that feeling of being not feeling in control. So when you are there in the dentist chair, you are vulnerable. You can't do anything. You have to just sit and wait for the procedure to finish. And sometimes the anesthetic may wear off, so you would start to feel the pain more, and you'd have to tell the dentist they'd have to put some more anesthetic. Do you like visiting the dentist? I don't particularly like visiting the dentist. I don't think a lot of people do. Maybe you do. It would be nice to hear from you. Let me know. And I don't think people visit the dentist enough. And it could be a few things. It could be the cost. So cost is a factor. Finding the time. You have to take time off work. And it's often the pain would force you to go to the dentist. What do you think of the smell and sounds at the dentist? The dentist is quite a unique place. It reminds me of a hospital. There's something about the surgery itself that reminds you of a hospital, where you see the chair, you have the bright light, you see all of the equipment around, and you generally see like a picture of a big tooth, and you can see the nerves coming down into your gums. But it's nice because it makes a connection in your head that there are nerves going into your tooth and you have to care for your teeth. And the smell can be quite clinical. You could smell maybe cleaning products or disinfectant products. Usually the smell of when you are using disinfectant to clean your hands, to wipe down surfaces. So the dentist is quite a unique place to go to. Also the sound, when you have the sound of the drill or the suction tool that the dentist's technician would use to suck up any saliva. So it's quite a unique place, and it can be anxious because you're not used to hearing those sounds every single day. Do you think trips to the dentist are reasonably priced? I think that on the NHS, I think it's reasonably priced. I think because things are difficult in terms of inflation, cost of living crisis, it could be cheaper to help people. But for some people, if they are claiming benefits or if they are unable to pay, then they can get help with this. And especially compared to private dentists, it can be very expensive if you go to see a private dentist. So it's a balancing act because you have to factor in things like the cost of the dentist's surgery, the tools that they're using, the equipment. Also, you're paying for a specialist service. They've had to study for many years, and if they make a mistake, it can be dangerous. So you really have to trust your dentist. Do you have any good or bad childhood memories of dentists? I think I was quite fortunate. I had a good dentist when I was a child. He would often tell me to brush my teeth and tell me off if he had to give me a filling and put a filling in to my tooth. And so he did it in a nice way. It wasn't in an aggressive way. So I felt I didn't want to go back to the dentist and for him to tell me off if I had to have another filling. So I would take more care of my teeth. But as a child, I definitely was scared of going to see the dentist because it's an unfamiliar situation. And again, you're feeling quite vulnerable because there's nothing you can do. And if you have an itch on your nose, for example, you can't scratch your nose. You have to stay very still so that the dentist doesn't make a mistake. So it can be quite a nervous time. Are your teeth in good condition? I think British people have the stereotype of having bad teeth. I think my teeth are okay. I think they could be better, but I think having good oral hygiene is very important. So brushing your teeth twice a day, using mouthwash, using dental floss, and I think drinking enough water as well, I think is good for your oral health. So I do know some people that have had dental implants. So they've replaced their teeth and their teeth look amazing. And I think one of the reasons they did this was to improve their confidence because they are in a customer-facing role and it's about the perception, unfortunately. I'm at a position now where I'm going to be 43 soon and I'm much more comfortable being in my own skin. And I feel like life is too short to worry about some of those things too much. But I can understand why people want to get it done. If that option is there and you have the finances, why not? Because it can be very costly, it can be very expensive. Do you have a lot of choice when it comes to dentists in your town? Fortunately, in the UK, you have a plethora of dentists, NHS dentists, private dentists. So there's always a good dentist you can find. Would you want to be a dentist? Would you want to spend your time looking in other people's mouths? I think it's quite an interesting job because it's one of those things where you can spend years not visiting the dentist, but then all of a sudden you can have an emergency and be in immense pain, and then going to see the dentist can alleviate that pain. So I think it's a very important job. Personally, I don't think I could be doing that day in, day out, but they seem to be well paid and have a nice lifestyle. So again, it's dependent on the individual. So let me know about your dentist experience. Do you like going to the dentist? When you went to the dentist last, what did the dentist do? Did they put in a filling? Did they take out a tooth? Was it just a checkup? Did they clean your teeth? It would be interesting to know. So thank you so much for watching. Watch this video next. Also, remember to click on the like button if you like this video, comment below, subscribe and share. It means so much to me. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next lesson. Thank you and bye-bye.